Hello and welcome to the Dribble Drive podcast, episode 76. Austin Render, Dalton Shetler with you. We're recapping a really big week number 2 in Big Ten women's basketball. Is a loaded slate. We're talking UCLA somehow going unblemished through a very difficult week. Michigan announcing itself as a potential Big Ten contender. A lot of teams just kind of on cruise control right now. We're going to talk about that. Going to give you our power rankings, our players of the week, all that good stuff. But first, Dalton, good morning. How are you, sir?
Good morning. How are you?
Wonderful. Just love talking. This was like week 1 was like, okay, I'm watching basketball for the sake of watching basketball. But week 2 was like, I'm locked in on some really good hoops. And that was a lot of fun.
No, and we've been spoiled really with some great non-conference
Mhm.
matchups. You mentioned UCLA's week. We'll get into some of that, but it's not just basketball for the sake of, hey, somebody's dribbling and shooting, but we've got some good action to follow early.
That's right. Well, hey, if you're joining us live, we appreciate it. If you're watching us or listening to us after the fact, we appreciate that as well. But go check out the Back Home Network YouTube channel. Give us a subscribe there. We'll keep you up to date on when we go live throughout this season. We're going to have episodes every Monday. We're going to try and keep them as consistent as we can, but Dalton and I's schedules certainly move around with travel and whatnot. But we're going to try and put out episodes every Monday. You can keep up to date. 2 spots to do that at the Back Home Network YouTube channel. Also on our social media account, Dribble Drive WBB. Trying to keep you up to date on what's been going on in the league, what's going on the night before, coming up that day. And then, of course, we're keeping you up to date on our podcast schedule as well. So go check that out if you want to stay up to date with everything Dribble Drive podcast. Without further ado, let's jump into today's podcast, which is, I think, going to start nowhere else, Dalton, but what UCLA did this week. I don't think we can go anywhere else, but starting with, I think, the number 1 team in the league. They're the number 3 team in the country. There seems to be a group of 3 teams right now nationally that have asserted themselves early in UConn, South Carolina, and UCLA. It's obviously still very early, but UCLA just dominant. I mean, let's start with the Oklahoma game. That was on Monday night. And it was a game that was kind of back and forth for a little bit. And honestly, the 2 games were similar, Dalton, both Oklahoma and North Carolina. You texted me, I think it was Thursday night, they were playing North Carolina, and you sent me the UCLA with the eyeballs emoji. And because I think they were only up 1 or 2 at halftime. And both of these games, they are just the better team that wears on you over 4 quarters. And it's hard to keep up. And we saw that in both this win over Oklahoma and the North Carolina game.
Well, and what's amazing to me, because you're right, like both of these, and by the way, Oklahoma and North Carolina, 2 really good teams. They fight for a while, and then UCLA just kind of flexes its muscle and says, let's just go ahead and pull away now. We don't have evidence or data yet, Austin, to know what the route is to this, but I don't know how you beat them. You're
Yeah.
talking about a team that's so dominant with Lauren Betts on the inside. You have shooters around with Dugalich, Jaquez, and then you have Kiki Rice, one of the better point guards in the country, and now a multi-level scorer in Neepkins mixed into that.
Yep.
We'll have to see at some point, unless they're going to go a perfect 40-0 or whatever it is this season. But like, it's hard to find the way to beat UCLA as we sit today.
It's not going to be this week because they play Southern. So I think we can hold
Never say
off
never.
a week. Never say never for I don't know what Southern's mascot is. But for Southern. But I mean, just listen to these. I mean, these lines. It's so balanced, Dalton, and that's why when I was going through my 3 stars of the week, and we'll get to that, it's hard to put a UCLA player in it because they're all doing something
Sure.
every day. And so the first game against Oklahoma, you get 20 from Gianna Neepkins. You get 16 from Angela Dugalich. You get 11 from Jaquez, 10 from Rice, 9 points for Betts, but she added 10 rebounds and 4 blocks. And that's one of the few games where she's going to have somebody somewhat her size with Regan Beers for Oklahoma, who did a pretty good job on Lauren Betts, all things considered. Thursday against North Carolina, Lauren Betts goes for 20, 10, and 7. Just a terrific performance. Kiki Rice, 15. Dugalich, 14. Jaquez, 12. And then on Saturday against USF, Jaquez, 17. Charlize Lager-Walker gets into it with 16 points. Neepkins, 14. Betts, 14. Rice, 12. Dugalich, 13. They can just get you from so many different directions. And I texted you this as well this week. Like, what other school in the Big Ten does Angela Dugalich come off the bench?
Yeah.
And the answer is none, right? I mean,
Yeah.
she is the sixth player, and she would start in all 17 other teams in this league. And it's just incredible the weapons they have. They're doing this without Tamia Gardner, who's been out so far this season. I don't know what the role is going to be for Sienna Betts this season, but she's been out so far, and yet they're still finding a way to do this. And I think, like, to your point, Dalton, they can have an off shooting night, and they've got enough to figure out other ways to score. They could have a night like against Oklahoma where Reagan Beers kind of takes away Lauren Betts, and they've got enough at the guard position to make plays. And I think the third thing that goes underrated with UCLA, their defense is unbelievable.
Yeah.
These are really good teams in Oklahoma and North Carolina. Now, the Tar Heels are not known to be a flashy offensive team, but they pretty much just said in the second half of both these games, you're not scoring anymore. And I mean, that's really impressive. And here's a stat for you, Dalton. Over the last 2 seasons, UCLA now has 14 top 25 victories, 6 top 10 victories.
Sheesh.
Just in the last 2 seasons, they are beating up on good basketball teams. And you're right, I don't know how you beat them.
And you know what's amazing too, because like we run through the mesh there is offensively, right? When you're talking about, or I did a couple of moments ago, and you kind of added on there with Betts inside, shooters around, Rice the distributor, Neepkins shot creator, all that. But you touched on something, Austin, that I think maybe goes under the radar when we talk about UCLA. It is the defense, and they have a capability of cutting the water off on you at any given moment. And the real reason why is because you have somebody with the size of Lauren Betts protecting the rim. It takes a chunk of the floor away
Yeah.
for opponents. And then when Kiki and Dugalich, Jaquez, we see all of them, the perimeter, like when they get active out on the arc, it's impossible for teams to really create anything because you can't go inside. You in front on the perimeter, good luck. I mean, it's hard to create shots against that defense that the Bruins have.
Yeah. Well, so here it's going to be Thanksgiving week that we're going to get to really find out, is UCLA going to be able to go whatever it is and because they're going to play Texas in the first round of the Players Era Women's Championship. And then I believe South Carolina is in that as well. Yes, it's South Carolina and Duke. So they could potentially play Texas and South Carolina in that tournament.
That's a Final Four.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Back-to-back days, they could play Texas and South Carolina. So that could be where we see something exposed. Then 3 days later, they fly back home and they host Tennessee. And then they play Oregon at home. So that's a 4-game stretch there where I'm not saying that Tennessee and Oregon are teams that are going to be favored to go in the Pauley Pavilion and win, but it'll be a test. And so we're going to find out a little bit more about UCLA, probably not this week against Southern, but next week in that Players Era Women's Championship in Las Vegas. But safe to say, Dalton, this is the most impressive team in the Big Ten right now, because I think you and I on last Monday were like, okay, let's see how they handle this. Let's see if they can get out of here with a 2-1 record this week. And it was 3-0, and it wasn't close. It just was not close.
They have the pieces, Austin, right now where it's hard to imagine them not in the Final Four. Like, as we sit here recording this in the middle of November, it's hard to create the scenario where they're not there, barring injury. That's how talented they are. I mean, I think they legitimately have the pieces they could push for a national championship this year. But, I mean, you could say the same about UConn. All three of those are very, to your point, there's a class of 3, it feels, at the top of the country, and all 3 of those feel legitimate options for the title, but it's hard to see any of those 3 not being in the Final Four right now.
Yeah, it almost feels like we've gone back to like the 2014 to 2018 type of women's basketball, where it's like, yeah, these teams, like, you can pencil them in to the Final Four at this point. And like, there is so much parity in women's college basketball, but a lot of it is happening below the top 5.
Yep.
There's a lot of really good teams from 5 to 20 that can all beat each other, but they aren't to the level where they can beat 1, 2, and 3 quite yet. And
Yep.
even 4, Texas is certainly not a slouch by any means, but we'll see how all these teams play each other. We're going to see Texas, South Carolina, and UCLA in
It's
the Players
insane.
Era Championship. What a field, man! That's awesome. I think the second most impressive team in the Big Ten. You got to give a hat tip to the Michigan Wolverines. I mean, this was limb from limb destruction by Michigan. I turned this on, was bouncing between this and some football, and I didn't have to watch this all that long, Dalton, because they just from the get go put Notre Dame away. And Hannah Hidalgo was not much of a factor early until the game kind of got out of hand. And the thing about Michigan is that it's not, and I said this in my little thing that I posted on our social accounts, they didn't do it with like a special performance, like somebody went 6 for 8 from three, or somebody went for 35 points. No, they scored 93 with just balance and just
Hmm.
really good days. I mean, they didn't even shoot the ball that well. Olivia Olson had 20 points. Mila Holloway had 12. Silas Swords did not shoot the ball great. She had 11. Soul Volcanic had 10. They led by 17 at the half. I mean, this game was over by halftime. And I think the mark of a focused team, Dalton, is when you're up 17 at the half and you win the second half by 22.
Yeah.
They did not take their foot off the gas. They did not lay back. This Michigan team looks like they are engineered to be a Big Ten contender. I don't know how they match up with UCLA. That's a different type of beast. But to me, last week we were impressed with USC making that jump. I think Michigan absolutely jumped up into the top, the second tier, the contending tier in the Big Ten.
No, I think that's fair. And what's interesting to me, because you mentioned that you watched some of this and you bounced around with some football. I was at a football game, so I was not able to watch this live, but I've seen some clips and I did some box score watching. There are two things that stand out to me. One, not to cover too much of the Notre Dame side because they're not in the Big Ten, but Notre Dame without Olivia Miles, this doesn't quite work the same anymore. And if they're going to not just win, but compete in this level of games, Hannah Hidalgo has to be unbelievably elite to carry them to that point. And in this one, 4 of 21 from the floor, 0 of 8 from three, 7 turnovers.
Yeah.
It doesn't give them a chance if she's not all American type special in these types of games. But the other part of that is Michigan, to your point, also balanced. This was a well rounded Wolverine effort in this one against Notre Dame. And for them to put up 93 points against a Notre Dame team, it really says something. And I think you and I both had an idea of what this Michigan team could be. And we felt confident about it, given that so much of the core from last year was back. And you imagine they took another step forward based on what was already a really impressive freshman class that they had out there a season ago. And I think what this one proves is they're here. I mean, that jump has been made. They're here. This is, to your point, a contending Michigan women's basketball team with how talented and how deep and well rounded they are.
I was so impressed offensively, defensively. It's something that when Indiana played their exhibition game and they won, I don't know, by 70 points, whatever it was. And I talked to Coach Moore after, and she said, I'm just so happy with the way our bench came in and didn't let the standard slip, even
Yep.
though the game was way out of reach. And I would imagine that Kim Barnes-Arico has a similar feeling here to where not only did they keep the pedal down offensively, but they kept Notre Dame locked down. And Hannah
Hmm.
Hidalgo didn't have that, like, oh, we're down 20, but here comes Hannah Hidalgo making 6 or 7 straight baskets. Like, no, they kept her locked down the entire game. And this was just, I mean, this is really impressive. But I don't want to take anything away from Michigan. That Notre Dame team is a work in progress.
Yep.
It isn't going. They're looking forward to 2026 because
Yep.
their recruiting class is really good next year. So they're not necessarily what Notre Dame of old has been,
Correct.
but it's still to beat a Notre Dame team by 39 points. You are
Exactly.
doing something right. And Michigan did a lot right in that game. So give Michigan a lot of credit. We'll see where they stack up in our power rankings coming up here once we run through some more games. Couple sneaky ones, Dalton. Actually, let's first talk about USC because they're kind of toward the top up there with Michigan as well. This kind of went how I thought it was going to go, if I'm being honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
USC was great against NC State. Awesome win. And that's why I'm not sitting here being like, oh my gosh, USC, can you believe they lost this game? No, they're fine. But they did lose the naming rights to USC, Dalton. That's really tough. We do have to call them Southern Cal, I believe, for the rest of the season. But no, they just didn't. They didn't have it. They didn't shoot the ball well. They were in this game down 2 at halftime. Malia Samuels hit a little buzzer beater at the break and got it to 2. Jazzy Davidson was in foul trouble a lot of this game. Never really got going. This felt like Dawn Staley, even though her team is still a work in progress because it's a lot of new players for South Carolina. This felt like her showing a new USC team where they still have to improve. And I think Dawn Staley does that better than almost anybody. Her and Gino Auriemma, when they play somebody who's like, ooh, okay, we got this fun USC team, just got a big win. You get humbled by Dawn Staley. And I don't think that South Carolina was amazing in this game, but they were really good defensively. They took everything away from USC. Everything was difficult, every possession for the Trojans. And it's a good learning experience for somebody like Jazzy Davidson who learns how to play against the elite of the elite in college basketball. So I'm not worried about USC whatsoever. I kind of saw this one in a way coming. I didn't think this was going to be much of a game. I was impressed they were in it heading into the third quarter. But again, the bigger thing, Dalton, is that, again, I mentioned we were flipping between football. I'm flipping between college football and women's college basketball on network TV on a Saturday. It was great. The Michigan game's on NBC. This is on Fox. Just a really fun day of watching basketball. But again, not worried about USC whatsoever.
No, I feel the same way, and I thought them being in it at halftime was impressive. But I do think you're right. I think South Carolina itself is a bit of a work in progress. And for USC, if anything, look, I'm not saying that we hit the panic button, but I do think it exposed a flaw that we were a little bit worried about before the season, and that's rebounding. Without Kiki Iriafen,
Yep.
how were the Trojans going to look on the glass? Look, South Carolina missed 42 shots in this game, and they had 21 offensive rebounds.
Ooh.
So half of their missed shots, they cleaned up the glass. I think that part is a really big concern. See, when they're competing against some of the best, look, they've got enough talent and they're good enough where they're going to win some games on talent alone. But I think, Austin, when we talk about in games of this, that's one of the areas that, like, when we dress up a keys to the game, when USC goes to play against Michigan or Maryland or Michigan State, like, we're going to, and who does step up and clean up the glass for them, because they've got great players, Kennedy Smith, Jazzy Davidson, London Jones, but we don't think of any of those as rebounders. And without the star Kiki Iriafen cleaning the glass for them, that part, I'm not saying I'm raising a huge red flag, but it is something to monitor as we go.
Yeah, I should say I'm not worried about USC in the sense that they don't like that my opinion of them doesn't change.
Right.
I don't think that they are the 2025-26 version is going to make that jump into the class they were in last year.
Hmm.
But that's a great point. Also, I mean, when you don't have somebody like Juju Watkins, this was also the concern. There's going to be
Yeah.
nights where it's like, where do we go offensively? They didn't really have that answer. They shot 33% from the floor, and Dalton 1 of 14 from the 3-point line. If Dawn Staley knew that's how they beat us, is they get hot from 3, and she turned the faucet right off from beyond the arc, and give South Carolina credit defensively for that. But USC not doing a whole lot in my head there. I still feel highly about them. I think had they lost both of those games to NC State and South Carolina, I'd be sitting here going, okay, this could be a long year for USC. But they showed me something early that gave me enough in my bank to say, you know what, USC is going to be just fine.
I agree with you, but before you move that visual graphic for the visual listeners and watchers along, you said USC lost the naming
I
rights. You
know.
USC being USC in the visual
I
graphic in South
know.
Carolina.
I know. Hold
You
on.
correcting that as we fly here in real time, taking away the naming rights from the Trojans.
I am live as we speak. Hold on. There we go. All right. Sorry, Southern Cal. You have officially lost the naming rights of USC. It happened live here on the Dribble Drive at minute 20. You can bookmark it, come back to it, whatever you want to do. It is over, at least until the next matchup of the
Right.
real. Maybe they'll play in the tournament and Southern Cal can earn it back. But yeah, you're right. It is gone. Two sneaky wins, Dalton, that I think were really good from the weekend. Let's start with Washington.
Mhm.
This was really impressive to me. This was a tie game at halftime. This is still a no Eladine Washington team. She's out with an undisclosed injury. She was listed as questionable on the injury report, which makes me think that she's getting closer. But again, you never know. Coaches could list
Right.
everybody as questionable. It's hard to tell at this point. But Washington 72, Utah 61. Washington gets the win. And Savia Sellers showed why the coaches had her as an all Big Ten selection preseason. Just said, get on my back. I'm going to take this thing over. 30 points for Savia Sellers, dominating this game. And it's similar to the Notre Dame thing. I don't know how good Utah is. And that's kind of the theme today. We're going to talk about Indiana coming up, beating Florida State. I don't know how good these other teams are going to be come season's end, but in November, when your team is still forming, and for Washington and Tina Langley, when your team isn't formed yet because maybe your best player is not playing,
Yep.
and you go on the road and you beat a team that's been in the tournament the last 2 seasons, that's worth something in my mind. So I give a lot of credit to Washington. This was a really nice performance. Not only did they get the 30 from Savia Sellers, they were really good in the second half. They did a good job. They held Utah to 23 points in the second half. And they did this, again, no Eladim, but also no three-point shooting. Washington was 3 of 17 from the three-point line. And that's not really Savia Sellers' game. Her game is using her quickness to get to her spots, to get to the bucket, to get to pull-up jumpers. And she was terrific. And I just think this is one that will go under the radar Saturday because you had the Michigan win. You had UCLA in action that night. You had USC. This one kind of snuck under the radar, but definitely something I wanted to shout out because this is a really good win for Washington.
Oh, I completely agree. And you mentioned 30 points from Savia Sellers. I've last year I called her this on this program the entire season, and I think we'll stay with it. She's a microwave.
Yep.
I mean, when she gets hot, she gets hot. And when Washington has old trusty stove oven Ladine down and not in, I mean, Washington had to turn to the microwave, and the microwave worked in the as good a fashion as it can. So Savia Sellers a 30 burger, and the Huskies get a big win. That is a big shout out.
Don't you hate when you got to warm something up in the microwave instead of the oven? But
I
man, you
know.
love when the microwave comes through for you.
That's
When you
right.
pull it out of the microwave and you're like, gosh, that tastes good. That tastes
Does
like I
that feel
just
like
put it.
Washington right now? Like that's
They're like, shoot, we don't have the oven, but at least we have the microwave. And you know what? It is working. And I look forward to seeing this team with El Ladine back out there because you and I were both very high on them in the preseason. And look, this isn't like them beating, this isn't Michigan beating Notre Dame, but it's a really solid road win. And when March rolls around and Washington could be a team, Dalton, that's fighting for a hosting position, they're going to say, hey, remember back in November when we went on the road and beat Utah? Washington fans will now be large Utah fans the rest of the
for sure.
season. You want
Yep.
Utah to be very good the rest of the way. Another sneaky win last night. Indiana goes to Florida State, wins 76-72. Very similar in the fact that I don't know what Florida State is going to be. They were without their best player, or at least their leading scorer, in Soleil Williams last night. But to me, this is more about Indiana, a team that Dalton, let's be honest, Tuesday night was rough. They
Yep.
turned the ball over 28 times in their win over Marshall. And I love what this phrase that Terry Moore uses a lot, and she used it at shoot around yesterday. She said, sticks in a bundle are tougher to break. And that's just her trying to get the team to stay together because she felt like at times in the Marshall game, they kind of crumbled under the press of the Thundering Herd. And she's like, look, we're going on the road. It's just going to be you against them in this crowd. You're going to have to stay together. There's going to be adversity. She's like, I hope it doesn't come, but I'm sure it will. And sure enough, Indiana was kind of in not cruise control, but in control of the game for about 25 minutes. And then Florida State went on a 14-1 run in the third quarter and took a 9-point lead with a minute and a half left in the third quarter. And it felt like, oh gosh, it's happening. Indiana was struggling. They couldn't get any stops. They couldn't get any scores. And Terry Moran called a timeout. Indiana immediately hits a 3 out of the timeout. It's a 6-point game going to the fourth quarter. And they scored 26 in the fourth quarter. On the road against a Power 4 team for a very new and young Indiana team, this to me was a nice performance. They still have work to do to continue to take steps forward, but a young team getting a road win. 3 players fouled out in this game, Dalton, including Shea Chesky, who had 22 points. They turned to Journey Kiaku, who is a veteran, has played a lot of college basketball at NC Central and Duquesne, comes to Indiana, hasn't played a whole lot this season, but her number was called because of the guard foul trouble, and she takes it to the basket and puts it in to make it a 4-point game with 15 seconds left, biggest basket of the game. And so that was a lot of fun to watch, and I know I'm there, and I'm rooting for the Hoosiers, obviously, but was just impressed with the team's resolve, especially coming off of Tuesday's performance. It was a really nice, heartwarming performance from Indiana to see them stick together through that adversity on the road and get to 4-0.
Well, I imagine a lot of the outsiders, the questions they would have, Austin, and since you're there, let's just turn it into an interview. But you mentioned the Tuesday night performance against Marshall was concerning, to say the least, with the amount of turnovers
Mhm.
and unforced turnovers that existed. For them to flip the switch and cut the turnovers in half,
Yeah.
even more than half against Florida State. Does that show that Indiana's issues, at least in that sense, are correctable for the season?
I think so. And I was telling people this week, I think, and I don't know, you can tell me if you agree with this or not, because it's not Indiana related, it's just more basketball related. I feel like a team that turns the ball over a lot is more correctable than a team that struggles shooting the basketball.
Agreed. I would
I
agree.
think you can coach turnovers away. It's harder to coach shooting to just come up out of nowhere.
Yep.
And so I kind of had faith that this is a really good staff and they're going to coach these turnovers because look, Indiana's starting a true freshman at point guard.
Hmm.
And so stuff like that's going to happen. And Lene Beaumont's having to take care of the ball a lot. She's only in her second year of playing basketball and only played spot minutes off the bench her first year, which was 2 years ago because she didn't play last year. So there's a lot of guard handling. Phoenix Stowtime comes over. She's a sophomore from Arkansas. A lot of these players just don't have a lot under their belts in terms of experience. And so it's taking a minute for them to figure it out. But the best thing about this, Dalton, is they're figuring it out while winning.
Yeah.
And that's the best ingredient is if you just keep winning, but you keep figuring it out. But yeah, I think turnovers are more coachable out of somebody, especially a true freshman point guard. She's learning as she goes. You could see her get rattled against that press on Tuesday. She looked much more comfortable out there yesterday against a really lengthy Florida State team. They have guards that have a lot of length to them. And Indiana, their small guards didn't panic. They made plays. And the big thing, I've been tooting the horn of Lene Beaumont ever since she got hurt last year. I watched her in practice last fall, and I was like, this is a special player. And then she got hurt, didn't get to play all of last season. She was going to be an integral part of last year's team, and that kind of threw the initial game plan off, led to some early season struggles. And last night was what we expect to see, not every night, but what we were excited to see from Lene Beaumont. 23 points, I think 8 of 13, 8 of 12 from the floor, 8 of 11, something like that. And then 3 for 3 from the three-point line. She had been 0 for 7 in her first 3 games, and that was just not like her. And she was rock solid, really good, has a lot of Grace Berger in her. I know I've said that on this podcast before, but I watch her play, and I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of Grace Berger. But she can shoot the 3 a little bit better than Grace can. And so I think there's a lot. The ceiling is pretty high for Lene Beaumont. It was great to see her have a night like that last night. And yeah, excited for Indiana. This was a nice win that come March could be over an NCAA tournament team on the road. And not saying Indiana will need it to get into the tournament, but it's certainly a win that will help your seeding when you have a road win against a Power 4 team.
For sure. No, that makes total sense. And I think gives a vote of confidence because, again, as we broke out the classes ahead of the season, there is, I think, a really large pack of what did we say? Did we feel it was 5 through or 6 through
Yeah,
13 that were
6 through 13. Yeah.
like that's and Indiana's in that bunch. So if you or at least we saw them in that bunch before we started the season. So if they're able to reach whatever their max potential is, that moves you up closer to 6th and
Yep.
gets you away from that 13. And that's a big deal.
Also, Zania Soka Guman, 3 straight double doubles. She has been awesome. That is something Indiana has not had. As good as Mackenzie Holmes was not the best rebounder of the basketball. There's times where Z just goes up and she just jumps higher than you. Like, I mean, it is so fun to
Just
watch.
athletic.
I mean, it's so fun. And she was awesome again yesterday, doing the dirty work. Only 11 points, but 13 rebounds in the win. Let's rapid fire through some results here, Dalton. Maryland gets a win yesterday at Princeton, or sorry, at home against Princeton, 84-68. One thing of note, not in this game, but this week, Dalton, we saw Kayleen Smeichel come back. She had been out for the first week of the season, 13 points in both games. In this one against Princeton, only made one field goal, got to the free throw line 11 times, made all 11. I don't know if Brenda Fries saw Aluchi Akanawa being as big of an offensive addition as she has been. She was known more for her defense. Now, she averaged double figures at Duke, but she was a really good defender, all ACC caliber defender. And she put up 20 in this Princeton game, 9 of 13 from the floor. They got off to a super hot start, lost the second quarter pretty badly, but got the momentum back in the second half. It's a solid Princeton team. That's a good win for Maryland, a good win that they controlled in the fourth quarter, never let it get too close. I'm still waiting a little bit on that Yarden zone game.
Yeah.
A first team All Big Ten selection, and she just hasn't quite had it. She did hit 3 threes yesterday, which was good to see, but she has struggled in terms of finding her scoring so far this season. She just hasn't quite had it. So far this year, she's gone 3, 12, 9, 10, 9. That's 8.5 a game, and she's shooting the three ball at 29%. So still looking for her to kind of figure it out and be that sidekick to Kayleen Smeichel. But for the time being, Aluchi Akanawa has been terrific, the Duke transfer, adding some points to this offense.
Well, and I will throw in here too, while we're rapid firing, that Maryland announced that one of the guards is out for the season with the torn ACL, a young, talented freshman. And one of the things we love so much, Austin, about this Maryland team is the depth.
Yeah.
That chips away a little bit at the depth of the Terps. Still believe in them, but it is worth noting as we get going here.
Yeah, and I
I think it's
apologize.
Bartelme.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I
Bartelme.
apologize. I don't know how to say it yet, and I'm trying to pull it up here as we speak. Leah Bartelme is how it looks on paper,
Yeah.
is who is out for the year. Here's pronunciations. Here we go. Leah Bartelma. There you go.
Bartelma.
Leah
Okay.
Bartelma.
I'm glad you had that in real time. Thanks
There
for the
we go.
correction. That's
Leah
perfect.
Bartelma out for the season with an injury. So that's a bummer for Maryland. She had been playing some really good basketball here of late. And so bummer to see her go down. But they do get the win and a nice one over Princeton. Nebraska, a little bit of a scare up at the Sanford Pentagon. They beat North Dakota State 82-70. This was a 6-point game going to the fourth quarter. Again, Nebraska is still minus Natalie Potts. They've been without Logan Nisley a little bit this season, as well as she's a little dinged up. But they're still getting really good production out of Britt Prince. This is why I put her on the first team All Big Ten on my ballot preseason. She had 18 in the dominant win over Creighton on Wednesday. My gosh, they just destroyed Creighton. And then she had 16 more in this one. That Creighton game, by the way, Creighton shot 29% from the floor, and I turned it on, and it was, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes into the second quarter. They didn't score the rest of the quarter, Creighton. They went over 6 minutes to finish the second quarter scoreless in that game. Or actually, I turned it on at the end of the first quarter because I saw the Jessica Petrie buzzer beater, which was sweet. I don't know if that was first quarter or halftime, but that was sweet. But
maybe we should do best shots on this show too, because
I know I don't
State
see
had a half-court
everything.
one.
We need listeners to submit that to our. That's what we need. We need listeners to tweet at us when cool things happen in games we're not watching. because it's hard to keep an eye on all 18 teams. So if you see something cool, tweet it at us at the Dribble Drive at Dribble Drive WBB, so we can keep an eye on what's going on there. But yeah, really, that's not a bad North Dakota State team by any means. A team that could certainly win their conference, but they needed a scare or needed a good fourth quarter to win this one. Nebraska is going to be better when Natalie Potts joins them, but for the time being, I was really high on Amaya Hargrove last year, Dalton. She's been really solid as well this year for Nebraska.
At 17 points in that one, 7 rebounds. And again, you talk about some of the ways to fill the void of Markowski's wake, right? Where you had
Yeah.
double doubles just every night produced. You talk about 17 and 7 for Hargrove. That shows a little bit of where some of that will get ate up for the Huskers.
Yeah, and Nebraska still undefeated. They keep rolling, and they've got Oral Roberts this week, so should be able to continue to tread water here as they wait for some of the reinforcements to
Mhm.
come back from injury. This was a this I need the Brooklyn Nine-Nine audio, where it's guess who just got murdered? Marquette. I'm sorry, but this was so impressive. 90-47. This is a Marquette team that just went to overtime with Wisconsin, and Minnesota said, no. Hold on. We are just going to win this game by 43 points. This was so impressive. Grace Grahalski, 19, Tori McKinney, 16. They're balanced. Sophie Hart, Briley Glenn, even Amaya Battle, 7 points, but 11 rebounds and 7 assists. Mara Braun, 9 points, but 6 rebounds and 7 assists. Like it seems, Dalton, and I'm not there, I'm not in the room, but it
Mhm.
seems like the players on Minnesota know their roles and they just deliver in said roles. Amaya Battle may not score 15 points tonight, but 11 rebounds from your point guard, that's pretty good. 7 assists from your point guard, that's pretty good. Minnesota just seems to be a team right now that's taking care of business. I'm going to start calling them TCOB teams, taking care of business. And Minnesota's doing that right now. This wasn't the stiffest test by any means. They're going to go to Kansas on Wednesday, which will be a good little test for Minnesota. But impressed with Minnesota so far this year.
Oh, and again, this goes back to a conversation we've had for the last couple of years, Austin. It's really stems from an impression we have of Don Plitzawhite,
Yeah.
and we've talked about last year. Look, when it comes to Big Ten Coach of the Year awards, in Big Ten women's basketball always seems to go to whoever wins the league, which I always agree with. Last year, I get it, right? Because you had USC and UCLA that were pretty much perfect throughout
Yeah.
the entire season. That was worthy. But we've had the discussion that Dawn Plitzawhite, you could almost put in that conversation for us every single year because she maximizes what she has. And this Minnesota team seems to be another example of that. I mean, Dawn is going to get everything out of them. Whatever Minnesota's ceiling is, it almost feels like they're a shoe in to hit what that ceiling is. The hard thing that you and I have a hard time just evaluating, Austin, is okay, does that ceiling put them at what spot in the
Yeah.
Big Ten
Yeah.
standings? But they're going to maximize what they have. That's what they do there.
Yeah. And I don't know where, like you said, I don't know where that ceiling has them stacked up at the moment. But right now, they've looked impressive. They're
Yep.
receiving votes. They're going to play in the Baja Mar Hoops Pink Flamingo Championship coming up over Thanksgiving week.
I might
South
see them there at
Florida.
Baja Mar. We'll be there, but I think a different region.
Okay. Yep. They got South Florida, and then they play either Harvard or Alabama. So a couple of games that will test them. And then how about this one? This is an early Big Ten game. December 7th, Maryland goes to the barn. That'll
Oh,
be
that's an
fun.
exciting one.
That might be
Yeah.
the best. And I haven't looked at the full slate, but that might be the best standalone December game in that little opening weekend that we're going to have in the Big Ten. So that'll be fun at the barn. A couple of teams that did not have it this weekend, Dalton. I'm not shocked by this one. UConn taking care of Ohio State. It's going to happen to a lot of teams. It happened to
Yep.
Florida State. It happened to Ohio State. It's going to happen to a lot of teams. I'm similar to USC. I'm not worried about Ohio State in the sense of this doesn't change my opinion of Ohio State. I don't think they're a top 5 team in the league. I don't think they're a bottom 5 team in the league. I think they're somewhere in the middle, probably like 7 or 8. And this doesn't change that. A lot of teams are going to go to UConn. They're going to get shelled. They're going to come home and be better for it. I think Ohio State will be better because of this.
Completely agreed. I think on yesterday's broadcast for the Michigan State women's game that I was doing, we got to the scoreboard and I had said UConn's going to claim a lot of victims today. It's Ohio State,
Yeah,
100-68. Like that's what it feels like. They're going to beat a lot of teams like this. That doesn't mean anything wrong with the Buckeyes. I think they're still a strong team. We just got to figure out where they stack up in this Big Ten race. Also,
that's right. Yeah, not any sweeping takeaways from this one.
nope.
Illinois, Shauna Green's got a young team, got a new team. They're still learning, and they are down for the year a couple of those young players,
I was
and
going to
so
say
they're
young team and injured team again, Austin.
yeah, and so they're still figuring out roles. They're still figuring out, I would imagine, lineups. So they lose on the road to an Oregon State team that's usually pretty solid. They do a good job out there in Corvallis, and tough to travel across the country and win. I think Illinois will be better because they've been tested on the road now. But again, this is a team that's still figuring itself out. They would have fallen in that category of the Indiana Washington had they won this game. Would have been a sneaky good win on the road. They
Mhm.
don't quite get it, but I don't think that tells me that Illinois can't be a tournament team by any means. It does tell me, though, that this is still a work in progress. This is a team that's going to have to figure it out as it goes. But when we talk about talent, there's a ton of talent on Illinois. One thing I thought was interesting to note here, Dalton,
Mhm.
was the starting lineup for Illinois. I know the starting lineup doesn't dictate everything, but Aaliyah Guyton and Maddie Weber both came off the bench in this game. They only got 5 bench points. They were all from Aaliyah Guyton. Maddie Weber did not score, only played 14 minutes in this game. They started Sarah Parchment, one of the very talented freshmen coming in. So they are not going with the transfer portal people as of right now. They're going with a lot of their freshmen that are healthy, a lot of their returning players. We're not seeing a ton, only 13 minutes for Guyton, only 14 minutes for Weber. Again, I think they're still trying to figure out what everyone's role is within this team.
I think you're right, and I just pulled up the box score too to kind of look at this. Parchment 4 of 6 from three
Yeah.
in this game with
Yep.
14 points. Barry Wallace 24 points, 2 of 4 from distance. But the other thing I wanted to highlight, much to your point, Parchment played 34 minutes. Barry Wallace played 34 minutes. Gretchen Dolan played 38 minutes for the
Woo.
Illini in this game. Off the bench, to your point, Guyton played 13 and Weber played 14. I really would have figured we'd see more minutes from that. And I know we're
Yeah.
talking about a team that's already losing some depth with attrition, but to have 3 players play at least 34 minutes on the road in a non-conference game against Oregon State, that almost feels like a little bit of smoke of the maybe just lack of depth now with the injuries and what they're trying to do and figure out.
Well, and what's a bummer is that when we talked to Shauna Green about a month ago, it was all about how this is the deepest team that
Yeah.
she's had, and she wasn't going to have to do what she did last year, which is play 6 players the entire game. And that depth got hit with 2 freshmen out for the season with injuries. So they're still trying to figure out where that depth will come from this season. But Illinois does lose that game. It was a 3-point game with 2 minutes to go after Parchment hit her 4th 3-pointer. They just could not get it across the line, though. But Barry Wallace has been terrific, actually leads the Big Ten in scoring. So shout out to Barry
Really?
Wallace. Yeah, she's been absolutely terrific this year. Um,
Oh,
Let me pull it up quickly here. Yeah, 24.3 points per game. She leads Savia Sellers 23.3, Shay Chesky 23, and Keomi McMillan 20. So Barry Wallace has been terrific, but they need a little bit more to help her as they go through this season. That's all the results that I feel like I wanted to whip through here, Dalton. Let's jump to our stars of the week as we're talking about Barry Wallace. She didn't make it on this list, but she was on my honorable mention list. Here are my 3 stars of the day or of the week. Savia Sellers was a no-brainer. 30 points in a road win at Utah. She averaged 24 and a half points per game this week. She was absolutely terrific and deserving of being on that list. Lauren Betts, I had to pick somebody from UCLA, Dalton, because of the week they had.
yeah.
And Lauren Betts is 20 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 blocks, and a win over North Carolina. I think that's something that's going underrated for Lauren Betts is her improvement at passing out of the double team. And also, she's got so many great players to pass the ball to now. She's just surrounded by talent. And I'm calling it right now, Dalton. There will be a triple double this year for Lauren Betts.
Ooh, I mean, there she's close, just 3 assists away.
Yep.
But the crazy thing too, Austin, is I mean, that feels kind of casual for Lauren
Oh,
Betts. Like
yeah.
that's just kind of another
Yep.
game for her.
Yep.
That's a
It's
ridiculous
unbelievable.
standard.
I think her triple double will have like 12 points. She's not going to light it up offensively because she's going to be dishing it out so much. But I could see a game where she's playing against another really good big and it ends up being like a 12 point, 12 rebound, 10 assist type of day for
Hey,
Lauren
by the
Betts.
way, I mean, talking about triple doubles, we didn't actually officially have one, but in the Big Ten, Michigan State's Kennedy Blair yesterday had 14 points, 8 boards, 8 assists. So
She's
she's
on the
flirted
hunt.
with triple double a couple times now.
Yeah, she wants one, man. We might get a Kennedy Blair triple double. She's been knocking on the door. She was in my honorable mention as well. Gracie Merkel has been really good just this season for Northwest or not Northwestern. She's Penn State. 20 points per
What
game
what
this
was
week.
the mix up in the mind there? I'm
Eh,
curious. The
Yeah, I don't. I was just. I have the stats pulled up on half of my screen, and I saw Grace Sullivan's name with the Northwestern
oh,
logo, and for some
see, I
reason, I
knew
just
it had to be something like that
it's in the
that
corner of
twisted
my
it
eye.
around. Yeah.
Gracie Merkel does not play for Joe McEwen. She plays for Carolyn Keeger. And 20 points per game this week for Gracie Merkel, 25 and 11 in a road win. This was a good win. Penn State got off to a slow start in this one, beat St. Joe's by 12 or 12 on the road. They're scoring the ball, Dalton. 89 points in this game. Gracie Merkel and Kiyomi McMillan have been terrific. They did kind of start like this last season, though, and then faded, obviously, in the Big Ten play. So they've got to keep it going. They've got a big one this week. They're going to play Princeton on Saturday in the Battle for Atlantis. So that'll be a fun matchup for Penn State to kind of see where they stack up against a good non-con opponent. Those are the 3 stars I nominated, Dalton. I don't know if you had any that jump off your list. I know you mentioned Kennedy Blair. I had Grace Van Sluten on here as well, averaging 18.7 rebounds a game this week. I'm going to be honest, it's hard not only with Michigan State, but with some of these teams that just are playing less talented opponents
Sure.
that, I don't know what the points necessarily mean as much as I do when like what these players are doing in big games, but B, they don't score as much because they don't play as much. And then it becomes this balanced attack where a lot of people play. So some of these ladies aren't getting to stay in the game very long. We mentioned Barry Wallace. I mentioned Lene Beaumont with her 23 points, 3 for 3 from 3 at Florida State. Zania Soka Guman, Z as we call her, back-to-back double-doubles this week. Addie Mack has had back-to-back 15-point games from Maryland. The freshman's playing really well. Olivia Olson had 20 in that win over Notre Dame. Britt Prince has been solid. Jelani Cambridge averaged 17 and a half a game this week. Another one like Grace Van Sloot with Michigan State. Oregon's not playing anybody right now, but Mia Jacobs, 21 and a half points per game this week for Oregon. She
Impressive.
had 26 against Grand Canyon. Angela Dugalich, we mentioned all the UCLA players. Gianna Neepkins, Kiki Rice, Gabriela Jaquez, all deserving of being shouted out. One of the things in the title of this episode is teams on cruise control, Dalton.
Mhm.
I don't know if you have any thoughts. You probably have Michigan State thoughts. But Michigan State's, these are the teams I would consider in cruise control right now.
Sure.
Iowa, Michigan State, Minnesota, Oregon. Teams that we're not talking about a whole lot because they're not playing the strongest competition, but they're just destroying the teams that they are playing and just don't seem to have any issues at the moment. We're waiting on them to be tested.
Well, and I was going to say, what's interesting about it, and I'd love to be able to talk about all of them, but because they're on cruise control, I don't think people are paying as much attention to those
Mhm.
games as the more competitive ones. So I don't, I know Iowa's been killing everybody they've been playing as well, but I
Yeah.
have not been able to sit and watch Iowa yet. I can speak to Michigan State to your point. I mean, look, you're right. For Michigan State, right now they're destroying everybody, and that's all you can really ask for with the slate they have. They're averaging 104 points a game. They're beating teams by I think it's 48. Hang on, I have the stat sheet here. No, 40 no 54
40,
points per
40
game.
yeah, 54 per game,
That's the victory margin.
102.8. They lead the conference by 8 points per game in scoring.
I mean, They're just Robin Fralick has scored 90+ points 22 times in just her short 3 years here
Jeez.
in East Lansing. In every game this year, Michigan State scored at least 90 points. The big thing to watch for, I think, with Michigan State, if you're looking for the impressive variable or stat to hone in on, if you're really analyzing Michigan State, it's the turnovers. Because Michigan State not only is forcing turnovers at a ridiculous rate, they've forced 122 turnovers this year, but they've only committed 35
Yeah.
in the 4 games. So you have a turnover differential of just about 90 through 4 games. I mean, that's breaking out to be an average of 22, 23 that they're plus per night. That's a ridiculous number.
You're also leading the Big Ten with a 3.14 assist to turnover ratio,
Yep.
just ahead of another cruise control team, Minnesota, 2.84. Minnesota is the only team averaging less turnovers per game than Michigan State. So, yeah, a couple of teams on cruise control. Felt like we should mention their names.
Yep.
But to be honest with you, if you're an Oregon fan, a Michigan State fan, a Minnesota fan, an Iowa fan, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but we're going to talk about you when you play better teams. And that's just how it is. And Iowa's going to play Baylor this week. What a great game that's going to be. Minnesota's
Yeah.
going to play at Kansas. That's an awesome opportunity. So we're going to have some moments here coming up where these teams are going to be tested. All right, Dalton, it's the time that everybody has their pitchforks out for. It's our top 5 power rankings. Last year we did 10. This year we're doing 5, mainly because I found a nice graphic that allows me to put 5 on it. But also 10 is really hard. You're really nitpicking when you get down to like 9, 8, 9, 10. So here's our top 5, and there's actually quite a bit of change here for me, at least. We both bumped Michigan up a spot. We'll read through these for the podcast listeners. UCLA number 1, not a surprise. We both bumped Michigan up to number 2. I think it speaks. I speak for both of us, Dalton, and say that Notre Dame win was impressive enough to bump them up ahead of USC.
And I think, Austin, I think I had Michigan at 4
You
last week. So
did.
that goes to show how much I rewarded that
You
win.
bumped them up 2 spots. So then USC drops a spot to 3. Again, I'm going to speak for you and say that that's not necessarily a USC bump down. That's more so of what we did for Michigan. USC was just the victim of circumstance there. Maryland, for me, jumps up 1 spot to 4. And then I bumped in Washington to 5. And I'll explain why here in a second. Dalton has Michigan State at 4, which I believe is down 1 spot because of the Michigan jump. And then Maryland stays steady at 5. I bumped Maryland and Washington up over Michigan State simply because I have watched them play a good team and I have watched them win against a good team. I am giving Maryland some benefit of the doubt with Princeton. I'm giving Washington the bump for winning at Utah. Once Michigan State plays somebody that I feel like, okay, we got to see them tested and answer some questions, I'll put Michigan. I still think Michigan State is a top 5 caliber team, but I want to reward Maryland and Washington for winning some games. We said it last week. Maryland had not really impressed us through week 1. I was impressed by the way they handled Princeton. That's usually a good defensive team in Princeton, and they put up 84 on them. So I give them the benefit of the doubt here because they've played some teams. Michigan State's doing everything they can, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just am going to live in the moment and give Washington a nice nod for winning at Utah.
I can get behind that rationale, but if you're living in the moment too, Austin, winning by 54 points on a nightly average is quite the moment. And I
pretty
get your
good.
point.
I think there's Indiana football fans who are mad at me because this was the argument people were making against IU football last year, where they were just beating up on bad teams and they're like, this team doesn't deserve to be this high. And I kept saying, yes, they do. So yeah, I went back and forth. I think it was 12:30 a.m. When we had gotten back from Florida State, and I'm staring at my Photoshop and I'm like, I think I had both teams in that slot 2 or 3 times, and I just kept flipping them back and forth. So it's really close. I'm just giving Washington the benefit of the doubt for a road win.
And I mean, to your point, Austin, like we go through these weeks. I mean, the rationale is fair. It's a fair logic. But this is all going to reveal itself anyway. To
That's
your
right.
point, oh, Michigan State plays somebody in the Bahamas, Temple the first game, maybe Clemson the second game. You get another look at what Michigan State is. It will reveal a little bit, and they'll probably leapfrog a little bit back into your rankings. So no,
That's right.
it's all going to play itself out.
It's November 17th, everyone. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But I would say Michigan State is my 6. Would you say Washington's right there as your number 6?
Yeah, yeah, I would.
And I think Minnesota and Iowa are in that conversation. They've, again, played well. I just don't know who they've beaten yet. So they would be kind of the teams knocking on the door as well for me.
I was going to say, I think for the preseason, I had 1 through 6, with Washington being at 6, the same 5 up there,
You
and
did.
none of
Yep.
those teams have done anything to necessarily take themselves out of that picture to me. So it's 1 through 6, maybe in a different order than I had in the preseason based on early results, but it's still that group feels right. Is my point.
Yeah, and I haven't dropped anybody in my rankings because they deserve to be dropped. I've
Right.
mainly dropped teams because I've raised others.
Yep.
Now, during the season, during the Big Ten season, there will probably be people that drop because they have lost a few games in a row, what may be. This is too early in the season. I mean, we've only had like 4 losses in the conference in total. So right now, teams are only shuffling because of what they're doing well, not necessarily because of what they're doing. And that's, again, to USC fans. We're not dropping you from 2 to 3 because we were disappointed. Sorry, Southern Cal fans, for what you did against USC.
It took a while to get
Um,
used to.
Gosh, that's so weird. I really hope it would be hilarious if like Fox and ESPN ran with that and everyone just got super confused when they saw USC on the screen. They're like, "What the heck?" That'd be awesome.
Good idea.
Let's wrap the show by talking about the next week's games. It's not as good of a slate, Dalton, as maybe it was last week, but there are still some good games for the podcast listeners. We'll run through. For those of you watching, you can see the graphic here. Tuesday, we've got Purdue at Kentucky. Purdue has not gotten off to the best start this season. That would certainly be a resume building victory for the
Austin,
Boilermakers.
I was going to say, sorry to jump in and interrupt, but you mentioned there's only been a couple of losses. One of them was Purdue dropping to Purdue Fort Wayne. That
Buzzer
was a
beater.
tough one
Yeah.
for the Boilermakers.
Buzzer beater for the Mastodons who got their first win. Oregon at Washington State Wednesday. It's going to be the first road test of the season for Oregon. That's a Washington State team that has really been picked apart by the transfer portal recently. So we'll see how that goes. Doesn't Oregon have a Washington State transfer, if I'm not mistaken?
Actually, yeah.
Tahina?
I think so.
Is it
I'll
Astra
see if I can find
Tahina?
it. You can keep running. I'll try and find it.
Okay, I think it's Astra Tahina. I have their page up. Hold on. Oregon. Yeah, Astra Tahina from Washington State. So a little revenge game for her, maybe a revenge game for Washington State against Tahina. But that's Wednesday night. Also Wednesday, Minnesota at Kansas. Mentioned that one. That'll be a fun one. Thursday, Rutgers is at Auburn. Rutgers, another team that dropped one early in the season. They've played a lot of close games so far this year. We'll see how they do on the road. Thursday night, though, is probably one of the 2 big headliners, the 3 big headliners this week. Thursday night, Iowa takes on Baylor in the WBCA Showcase in Florida. That's 9 o'clock on ESPN2. Important to note, if you're watching us live, these rankings, or if you're watching us just in general, we are doing these shows on Monday mornings, so these rankings are not reflected upon what's going to be at noon or 1 o'clock whenever they come out, the new AP poll. But number 21 Iowa against number 7 Baylor. That's going to be a lot of fun. We'll see the first test of the year for the Hawkeyes. I mainly bring that up because of this game on Friday. Number 8 USC probably going to drop a couple spots against number 18 Notre Dame. Might not be ranked in this coming poll here in a couple hours, but that's Friday night at Purcell Pavilion in South Bend, 6 o'clock on ESPN. Still a good test for USC. I don't care what Notre Dame just did to Michigan. Still a good test. This is the headliner though, Dalton. Friday night, Michigan might jump into the top 10. They're number 14 right now, taking on number 1 UConn. It's not in stores. It is going to be at Mohegan Sun Arena, still in Connecticut, but not technically in the home arena for UConn. That's 8 o'clock Friday night on Fox. That's appointment TV. Saturday, Princeton against Penn State, battle for Atlantis. And Sunday, Illinois travels again on the road. Another weekend on the road for Illinois. They'll be at Florida State Sunday afternoon. Any takeaways for you on the big games we've got this week?
Well, I think where this starts to get interesting, one, Iowa gets a real test that we get to see, but a lot of transitive property in some of these. We've seen Princeton against Maryland, and now they get ready to play against Penn State. You've seen a couple of these at Notre Dame. Obviously, they just played Michigan. Now you get to see them against USC.
Yep.
Michigan, we just saw UConn beat Ohio State. How does Michigan maybe close that gap a little bit? There's a lot of Illinois, Florida State. We just saw Indiana beat Florida State. So you have a lot of games where, look, I'm not saying the transitive property is a good measuring stick, but it's one of the only tools you're going to be able to use at this point in the season. So we'll be able to use that this week.
And then Iowa also plays Miami, Florida in that same showcase this weekend. That was one that I did not get on the graphic that is certainly worth mentioning. I'm trying to think if there's any other ones that I didn't get on there. I think that was pretty much it. Michigan, we've mentioned they play UConn. They're also going to play Syracuse out there in Connecticut as well. So a couple games did not make the graphic, but are certainly worth mentioning. But again, this is the headliner, Michigan, UConn, Friday night. We saw UConn dispose of Ohio State, but we saw Michigan dispose of Notre Dame. I'm really interested in this matchup, Dalton. We're going to find out a little bit about this new Michigan team in Sol Volcanic. Can she battle in the post against Sarah Williams? It's going to be a great matchup because this is why Michigan went out and got her, so that they had a post player that could go against some of the best posts in the country. That is Sarah Williams and Sarah Strong for UConn. And be very interested to see how Michigan matches up down low.
No, I think that's the spot on way to take a look at it because you have some of the best post play in the country when it comes to the UConn Huskies. And of course, I mean, Michigan with KBA last year just decided to run 5 guards. And now you're starting to see them go back with a little bit more post play, be able to have some answers when they get into some games like that. I think that's pretty big. You and I already talked about it. I think Michigan's proved themselves worthy enough of being towards the very top of this conference. At least right now, that's where we would place them. We both had them at 2 right now. I think if they test UConn in this game, we could start having a conversation that maybe Michigan's ceiling is higher than we even anticipated.
Yeah.
And right now, we've got them sitting at 2.
Yeah, I'm curious if they play this game tough, are they knocking on the door of UCLA's tier? Certainly, if they win the game, they are in UCLA's tier. If they end up a victim like Ohio State, are they dropping back down into the pack? I don't know yet. I would need to see how the game goes.
And that pack, by the way, is like 2 through 5
really
in the
good.
Big Ten. So
Yeah.
it's a really good pack if they're in that pack.
But you think about what we talked about with Charlie Crean before the season. The Big Ten needs a few more teams to be like elevated. Like there's a lot of Big Ten teams that are going to make the tournament. There's not. It's the same thing as last year. There's not a lot of Big Ten teams that are going to make the Sweet 16 in his projections. So can you get somebody like a Michigan, somebody like a USC, somebody like Michigan State to elevate themselves and become a hosting school, become a Final Four type of caliber team? Because we know UCLA is. Michigan has a chance to do that against UConn on Friday. Should be a wonderful game, nationally televised on Fox Friday night. Dalton, this has been great. It was really our first like substantial recap. So we hit the hour mark and went a little over it, which is great. We love the people who joined us live. We appreciate anybody who's watching us. Subscribe to the Back Home Network YouTube channel. Check out all of our content there. You can follow us, Dribble Drive WBB on X. Keep you up to date on all of our episodes and content there on the social media platforms. We'll continue to put out our episodes every Monday as we recap the week that was, we preview the week that is, and this week is headlined by Michigan and UConn on Friday night. Dalton, any final words on the opening big week of Big Ten women's basketball?
It's been a lot of fun, and look, we're only 2 weeks down. We've got months
So
to
much
go.
to go. So long.
Buckle up.
Oh, we got so much basketball to get to, and we appreciate everybody who's joined us. Tell a friend, give us a rating on Apple and Spotify podcasts. That stuff really helps us as we go forward. Well, that's it for this episode 76. For Dalton Shetler, I'm Austin Renner. Thanks for those of you who watch live. Another great week of Big Ten women's basketball. We'll talk to you guys next time.